Two police officers stood frozen in disbelief as gunshots echoed through a quiet suburban neighborhood. What they witnessed that evening would haunt them forever. A man with no criminal history had just executed his 6-month pregnant wife right before their eyes. The pristine white picket fence and manicured lawn told the story of the American dream, but the blood pooling on the driveway revealed a nightmare beyond imagination. In a split second, 2 lives were lost, a family destroyed, and a community shattered. But what could drive a man with no criminal record to commit such an unthinkable act in front of the very people sworn to protect? Welcome to True Crime Journal HQ. Thanks to all our viewers and subscribers for your support. Stay with us for daily update on the most shocking true crime stories. Don't forget to subscribe. Lila Marie Thompson grew up in a working-class family in Ohio, the youngest of 3 daughters. Her parents, both teachers, instilled in her the values of hard work and determination. Even as a child, Lila stood out. She was the kid who organized neighborhood lemonade stands and convinced her friends to put on backyard talent shows for their parents. Her infectious laugh could light up any room, and her optimism was genuine. In high school, Lila dreamed of becoming a nurse. She spent summers volunteering at the local hospital, reading to elderly patients and helping in the children's ward. Her compassion wasn't just for show, it was woven into who she was. Friends remember her as the person you'd call at 2 a.m. when life got tough, knowing she'd listen without judgment. College brought new adventures. Lila moved to Kentucky for nursing school, where she threw herself into her studies with the same enthusiasm she'd always shown. She worked part-time at a coffee shop to help pay for school, often covering shifts for classmates who needed time off. Her professors loved her dedication, and her patients adored her gentle bedside manner. It was at that coffee shop where fate intervened. Jonas Kellen walked in on a rainy Tuesday morning, soaked from head to toe after his truck broke down. Lila handed him a towel and a free coffee, refusing to let him pay. "Nobody should start their day this rough," she said with that trademark smile. Jonas was smitten instantly. Their courtship was straight out of a romantic movie. Jonas would show up at the coffee shop every morning, not just for the caffeine, but for those few minutes with Lila. He'd leave little notes with his tips, jokes, compliments, or just, "Have a great day." When he finally worked up the courage to ask her out, she'd been waiting weeks for him to make his move. Dating turned into something beautiful. Jonas was everything Lila had hoped for in a partner, reliable, hard-working, and kind. He supported her through nursing school, driving hours just to spend weekends together. When she graduated, he surprised her with a small diamond ring and a proposal that made her cry happy tears for hours. Their wedding was modest but perfect. Lila wore her grandmother's dress, and Jonas couldn't stop grinning throughout the ceremony. Friends and family saw a couple genuinely in love, ready to build something lasting together. The honeymoon photos showed 2 people who couldn't imagine being anywhere else but in each other's arms. After marriage, they settled into a comfortable rhythm. Lila found work at the county hospital, quickly becoming a favorite among both patients and staff. Jonas's contracting business was growing steadily, and they began talking seriously about starting a family. When Lila discovered she was pregnant, their joy was infectious. They spent hours discussing baby names, painting the nursery, and planning their future as parents. The move to their suburban home felt like the final piece of their puzzle. The White House with blue shutters sat on a tree-lined street, where children rode bikes and neighbors waved from their porches. Lila would stand in the nursery, hand on her growing belly, talking to their unborn daughter about the life they'd build together. To everyone who knew them, Jonas and Lila Kellen were relationship goals. They seemed to have figured out the secret to lasting happiness: mutual respect, shared dreams, and genuine love for each other. Neighbors often commented on how Jonas would rush home from work just to walk with Lila around the block, his hand protectively on her back. Have you ever thought you knew a couple completely, only to discover darkness beneath the surface? While Lila was busy planning their daughter's nursery, Jonas was drowning in a financial nightmare he'd created entirely on his own. It started 18 months earlier, with what seemed like a golden opportunity, a real estate investment that promised huge returns with minimal risk. A buddy from his construction crew had made serious money flipping houses, and Jonas wanted in on the action. The deal looked legitimate on paper. Jonas borrowed against their home equity and emptied their emergency savings, convinced he'd double their money within 6 months. He told himself he was securing their family's future, but he never discussed it with Lila. "I wanted to surprise her with the profits," he later told investigators. Instead, the housing market took an unexpected downturn, and Jonas watched their entire investment vanish overnight. Panic set in quickly. The monthly payments on the equity loan were crushing, and Jonas had no way to cover them without revealing his massive mistake. He started juggling bills, paying minimums on credit cards while borrowing from one account to cover another. His contracting business was seasonal, and winter months meant reduced income just when he needed money most. Lila began noticing small changes first. Jonas seemed stressed constantly, snapping at her over minor things that never bothered him before. He'd disappear into his home office for hours, claiming he was working on bids, but she could hear him pacing and muttering to himself. When she offered to help with the household finances, he became defensive, insisting everything was under control. The lies multiplied rapidly. Jonas started intercepting mail before Lila could see overdue notices. He opened new credit cards in both their names, maxing them out to make minimum payments on existing debts. When Lila asked why they couldn't afford the baby furniture they'd planned to buy, Jonas blamed slow-paying clients and promised things would improve soon. But money wasn't Jonas's only secret. The stress of his financial troubles had been eating away at him, and he found comfort in an unexpected place. Rebecca, a project manager for one of his commercial clients, began staying late to discuss work details. Those conversations gradually shifted from business to personal, with Jonas confiding his fears about becoming a father and providing for his family. Rebecca was everything Lila wasn't in that moment. She didn't represent responsibility or consequence. She was single, carefree, and offered Jonas an escape from the crushing weight of his failures. What started as emotional support evolved into something much more dangerous. Late-night text conversations turned into lunch meetings, then weekend phone calls when Lila was working hospital shifts. Jonas convinced himself he wasn't really cheating, since nothing physical had happened, but his emotional investment in Rebecca grew stronger as his marriage felt increasingly suffocating. Every conversation with Lila about the baby or future plans reminded him of how badly he'd failed as a provider and partner. Meanwhile, Lila's natural instincts were picking up on the changes in her husband. Jonas seemed distracted during conversations, constantly checking his phone and making excuses to step outside for work calls. The man who used to rush home to spend time with her was now finding reasons to stay out later, claiming project delays or client meetings. The pregnancy should have been bringing them closer together, but instead, Lila felt Jonas pulling away when she needed him most. She chalked it up to pre-fatherhood nerves and tried to be patient, but something deep in her gut told her there was more to the story. What would you do if you discovered your partner had been living a double life? If you can't relate to Lila's heartbreak, are you sure you're paying attention? Don't miss a moment. Hit that subscribe button now so you never miss another true crime story like this. But Lila's next discovery would shatter everything she thought she knew. It was a Thursday evening in March when Lila's world collapsed. Jonas had left his phone on the kitchen counter while showering, something he'd been careful never to do lately. The screen lit up with a text notification, and Lila glanced over casually until she saw the name Rebecca with a heart emoji. The message read, "Missing you today. Can't wait to see you tomorrow night." Lila's blood turned cold. She knew every person in Jonas's work circle, and there was no Rebecca. Her hands shaking, she scrolled through the message thread. What she found destroyed her in seconds. Months of intimate conversations, plans to meet, and messages that left no doubt about the nature of their relationship. "You make me feel alive again," Jonas had written. "Being with you is the only time I can breathe." Rebecca had replied, "I know this is complicated with the baby coming, but we can figure this out." Lila sank onto the kitchen floor, her pregnant belly making it hard to catch her breath. The man she'd trusted completely, the father of her unborn child, had been living a completely different life. She read message after message, each one cutting deeper than the last. When Jonas emerged from the shower, he found Lila holding his phone with tears streaming down her face. The color drained from his face instantly. "Lila, I can explain." "Explain what?" she screamed. "Explain how you've been cheating on me while I'm carrying your child. Explain who Rebecca is and why she thinks she knows about our baby." The confrontation that followed was brutal. Jonas tried to minimize the affair, claiming it was just emotional support and that nothing physical had happened. But Lila had read enough to know he was still lying. The messages referenced meeting at hotels, weekend trips when he claimed to be working, and intimate details that left no room for doubt. "You've been planning a future with her while I'm growing your daughter," Lila sobbed. "How could you do this to us?" Jonas's response shocked her even more. Instead of apologizing, he became defensive, blaming Lila for being too focused on the pregnancy and not understanding the pressure he was under. He accused her of not being supportive enough, of making him feel trapped and suffocated. That's when the financial revelations came pouring out. In his anger, Jonas confessed everything: the failed investment, the mounting debts, the juggling of bills, and the fact that they were essentially broke. Their dream home was mortgaged to the hilt, their savings were gone, and they owed more than Jonas could ever hope to pay back. Lila felt like she was drowning. Not only had her husband betrayed her emotionally, but he'd also destroyed their financial security without her knowledge. Every plan they'd made for their daughter's future was built on lies. "I trusted you with everything," she whispered. "Our marriage, our money, our child's future, and you've destroyed it all." The arguments continued for days. Jonas would leave for work in the morning, and Lila would spend hours crying, trying to figure out how to move forward. She confided in her sister Emma, who immediately offered her a place to stay. The betrayal felt unbearable, but being pregnant made everything more complicated. Lila's emotions swung between devastation and fury. She'd invested 6 years of her life in this man, supported his dreams, and was carrying his child. Now she discovered that everything she believed about their relationship was a lie. The breaking point came when Jonas asked her to be patient while he figured things out with Rebecca. He wanted Lila to wait while he decided between his pregnant wife and his mistress. That night, Lila made a decision that would change everything. How far would you go to protect yourself and your unborn child? If you haven't subscribed yet, what are you waiting for? The full truth of Lila's struggle is only beginning, and you don't want to miss what happens next. Subscribe now, before it's too late. What Lila did next would set off a chain of events no one could have predicted. Lila's decision was swift and calculated. If Jonas could lie and betray her trust, she would protect herself and her unborn daughter the only way she knew how. Early Friday morning, while Jonas was at a job site, Lila drove to their bank with a determination that surprised even her. She withdrew every penny from their joint savings account, $12,000 that represented what little remained of their financial security. But Lila wasn't done. She also emptied their joint checking account, leaving Jonas with exactly $47 in his personal account. Years of marriage had given her access to everything, and she used that access without hesitation. Her next stop was the credit union, where they held their joint credit line. Lila presented the loan officer with documentation claiming Jonas was making unauthorized purchases and requested an immediate freeze on all credit access. The paperwork was processed within hours, cutting off Jonas's ability to borrow against their remaining assets. By noon, Lila had packed 2 suitcases and loaded them into her car. She left a note on their kitchen table that simply read, "You wanted to choose between us and her. I'm making the choice easier for you." Emma's house became Lila's sanctuary. Her sister had always been protective, and seeing Lila's tear-streaked face only fueled her anger toward Jonas. "He doesn't deserve you or that baby," Emma declared, helping Lila settle into the guest room that would become her temporary home. Meanwhile, Jonas discovered the financial devastation when he tried to buy lunch at a job site. His debit card was declined, then his credit card, then his backup card. Frantic phone calls to the bank revealed the truth. Lila had cleaned them out completely. The rage that consumed Jonas was unlike anything he'd ever experienced. He called Lila repeatedly, leaving increasingly aggressive voicemails. "You can't just take everything and disappear," he screamed into the phone. "That's my money too. That's my daughter's future." But Lila had changed her number and blocked him on social media. Jonas felt completely powerless for the first time in his adult life. His affair with Rebecca suddenly seemed trivial compared to losing access to his own finances and his pregnant wife. The next 2 weeks were hell for Jonas. Without money, he couldn't pay his crew, forcing him to shut down active construction projects. Clients began demanding refunds for work that hadn't started, and his business reputation crumbled overnight. The stress was eating him alive, and Rebecca's sympathy felt hollow compared to the magnitude of his losses. Jonas became obsessed with the idea that Lila was trying to destroy him completely. He drove past Emma's house repeatedly, hoping to catch Lila coming or going. He showed up at her hospital, demanding to speak with her, until security escorted him out. His behavior became erratic and unpredictable. That's when Jonas made a decision that would seal everyone's fate. He walked into a sporting goods store and legally purchased a .38 caliber handgun, telling the clerk he needed it for home protection. The background check came back clean. Jonas had no criminal record and no history of domestic violence calls. He spent hours at shooting ranges, learning to use the weapon he claimed was for protection. But those who knew Jonas later said the gun seemed to give him a sense of control he'd lost when Lila left. It became his constant companion, a reminder that he still had power in a situation where he felt completely helpless. When someone betrays you, does revenge ever really solve anything? If you're not subscribed yet, you're turning your back on this intense story. Don't miss out. Hit that button and keep up with every shocking twist. But on this particular day, when Lila returned home, something far more dangerous was about to unfold. April 15th started like any other spring Tuesday. Lila had been living with Emma for 3 weeks, but she needed to collect some belongings from the house. Baby clothes she'd already bought, important documents and personal items that held sentimental value. She chose a Tuesday afternoon because Jonas typically worked late on weekdays. But Jonas wasn't at work. His business had completely collapsed without access to funds, and he'd been spending most days at home, consumed by anger and planning what he'd say when Lila inevitably returned. When he saw her car pull into their driveway at 2:30 p.m., he felt a mixture of relief and rage that had been building for weeks. Lila approached the front door cautiously, keys in hand. She hoped to get in and out quickly, avoiding any confrontation, but Jonas was waiting in the living room, and the moment she stepped inside, the tension was explosive. "So you finally decided to come back," Jonas said, his voice cold and controlled. "I'm just here for my things," Lila replied, trying to keep her voice steady. "I don't want to fight." "Your things?" Jonas's voice rose. "What about my things? My money, my business, my life that you destroyed?" The argument escalated quickly. Jonas followed Lila through the house as she tried to pack, hurling accusations and demands. He wanted her to return the money, to come home, to stop this nonsense and work on their marriage. Lila tried to explain that trust, once broken, couldn't simply be repaired. But Jonas wasn't listening. "You're taking my daughter away from me," he screamed. "You're destroying our family over nothing." "Nothing?" Lila spun around, her own anger finally surfacing. "You cheated on me. You lied about our finances. You ruined everything we built together." Their voices carried through the thin walls of their suburban home. Martha Chen, their 67-year-old neighbor, was tending her garden when she heard the shouting escalate to a level that genuinely frightened her. She'd never heard Jonas raise his voice before, and something about the intensity made her hands shake as she dialed 911. "I need police at 847 Maple Street," she told the dispatcher. "There's a terrible fight happening next door. The woman is pregnant and I'm scared someone's going to get hurt." Officers Michael Torres and Janet Wu were dispatched to the domestic dispute call at 3:17 p.m. They'd both responded to countless domestic calls throughout their careers, but something about this one felt different from the moment they arrived. The shouting was audible from the street, and they could see shadows moving rapidly past the windows. Officer Torres knocked firmly on the front door. "Police, we received a call about a disturbance." Jonas opened the door, his face flushed with anger but trying to appear composed. "Everything's fine, officers. Just a disagreement between husband and wife. but Officer Wu could see Lila in the background, visibly upset and holding her pregnant belly protectively. "Ma'am, are you okay? Do you feel safe?" That question seemed to trigger something in Jonas. Safe? She's the one who stole everything we own. She's the criminal here. The officers recognized the volatile situation immediately. Officer Wu moved to escort Lila outside, while Officer Torres attempted to calm Jonas down. Standard protocol for domestic disputes: separate the parties, de-escalate the situation, and ensure everyone's safety. "Sir, I need you to take some deep breaths," Officer Torres said calmly. "Let's talk about this situation and figure out how to resolve it peacefully." But as Officer Wu guided Lila toward the front door, Jonas became increasingly agitated. "Where is she going? She can't just leave. She's taking everything from me." "She's not under arrest, sir," Officer Wu explained. "She's free to leave if she wants to." That's when Jonas snapped completely. "No, she's not leaving, not with my daughter, not after what she's done to me." He broke away from Officer Torres and ran toward the back of the house. Both officers immediately recognized the danger. A fleeing suspect in a domestic violence situation often meant weapons were involved. "Stop! Don't move!" Officer Torres shouted, pursuing Jonas through the house. But Jonas had already reached his bedroom closet where he'd hidden the .38 caliber pistol. In his mind, this was his last chance to regain control, to make Lila understand the consequences of her actions. When Jonas emerged from the bedroom with the gun in his hand, both officers drew their weapons immediately. "Drop the weapon. Drop it now," Officer Wu commanded, positioning herself between Jonas and Lila. "Put the gun down, Jonas," Officer Torres added. "Let's talk about this." But Jonas wasn't listening anymore. His eyes were fixed on Lila, who stood frozen in terror near the front door. In that moment, all of his anger, desperation, and sense of betrayal focused into a single devastating decision. "You destroyed everything," he said quietly, raising the gun. The officers continued shouting commands, but Jonas fired 3 shots in rapid succession. Lila collapsed instantly, and the officers' attempts to provide medical aid were futile. She and her unborn daughter were pronounced dead at the scene. Jonas dropped the weapon and stood motionless, appearing to realize for the first time the magnitude of what he'd done. He offered no resistance as Officer Torres placed him in handcuffs. Could this tragedy have been prevented? What warning signs might we have missed? Don't let this heartbreaking story fade away. If you're still not subscribed, what are you waiting for? Join our community now and be part of the conversation. Jonas Kellen was charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder, 1 for Lila and 1 for their unborn daughter, whom they had planned to name Emma after Lila's sister. Additional charges included aggravated assault with a deadly weapon and domestic violence in the presence of law enforcement officers. The news of the shooting spread through their suburban community like wildfire. Neighbors who had waved at the couple during evening walks struggled to comprehend how their quiet street had become the scene of such horrific violence. Martha Chen, who made the 911 call, required counseling after witnessing the aftermath through her window. "We thought we knew them," said David Martinez, who lived 3 houses down. "They seemed like the perfect young family. It makes you wonder what's really happening behind closed doors in your own neighborhood." The local hospital where Lila worked held a memorial service that drew hundreds of attendees. Her colleagues remembered her infectious smile and dedication to her patients, struggling to reconcile the vibrant woman they knew with the tragic victim she became. The pediatric ward, where Lila had volunteered during nursing school, established a scholarship fund in her memory. Officers Torres and Wu both requested trauma counseling following the incident. Despite their years of experience, watching a pregnant woman murdered in front of them while they tried to intervene left lasting psychological scars. The department implemented new protocols for domestic violence calls involving weapons based on lessons learned from this tragedy. Emma, Lila's sister, became the public face of the family's grief. She spoke at community forums about domestic violence warning signs, urging people to take financial abuse and emotional manipulation as seriously as physical violence. "My sister tried to protect herself and her baby the only way she knew how," Emma said during one emotional speech, "but the system failed her when she needed it most." Jonas's trial lasted 6 weeks. His defense attorney argued that the financial stress and emotional turmoil had triggered a mental health crisis, but prosecutors painted a clear picture of escalating control and violence. The jury deliberated for only 4 hours before returning guilty verdicts on all charges. He was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. During the sentencing hearing, Jonas finally showed remorse, breaking down as he addressed Lila's family directly. "I destroyed the only good thing in my life," he said through tears. "I took away a beautiful soul and an innocent child who deserved to live." The case sparked broader conversations about domestic violence prevention and the dangerous intersection of financial abuse, infidelity, and access to firearms. Local advocacy groups used Lila's story to push for stronger protective measures and better resources for pregnant women escaping abusive relationships. How do communities heal from witnessing such senseless violence? This could happen anywhere, to anyone. If you're still here without subscribing, ask yourself why. Help us spread the word. Hit that button now to never miss another story like this. Lila and Jonas Kellen's story serves as a devastating reminder that domestic violence doesn't always start with physical abuse. Financial deception, emotional manipulation, and betrayal of trust can escalate into deadly situations faster than anyone expects. The warning signs were there: secretive behavior, defensive responses to questions about money, and growing isolation from support systems. When betrayal, desperation, and easy access to firearms collide, the results can be catastrophic. Jonas's legal gun purchase became the tool that destroyed 2 innocent lives and shattered multiple families forever. This tragedy could have been prevented with better recognition of escalating warning signs and intervention before the situation reached its breaking point. Where are you watching from? Share your location and thoughts in the comments below. Have you witnessed similar warning signs in your community? If you haven't subscribed yet, you're really missing out. Don't let the story end here. Hit subscribe and be part of the solution.